Hi, my name is Altagracia Perez-Bullard, and this is my wife,
Cynthia
Cynthia.
Bullard-Perez.
There you go. So we're here excited to have a conversation with you about the reasons why and the ways that you might be able to support children in your community during this COVID pandemic. A lot of our young people are being destabilized, and churches might be able to provide some of the safety net support that children and their families need so that they can thrive during this time. So as I've said, I'm Altagracia Perez-Bullard. I am assistant professor of practical theology at Virginia Theological Seminary, and this is one of the resources of lifelong learning, one of our programs. And I come to you as a person who's worked with congregations for 30 years, making connections between churches and neighborhoods so that they can be a resource and a service to the communities where they find themselves. Cynthia, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Cynthia Bullard-Perez. I'm married to the Reverend there. Um, and this is weird because I'm downstairs and she's upstairs. She's a priest and I'm a lay person. I'm the spouse of a priest. And so I come with a lot of experiences of working with children and families during their most difficult times. I have a background in child welfare. Um, I got to meet families when, you've parented appropriately for 9, 10, 15 years, and suddenly something in your system has broken down and there's an abuse report. And so this is just like one of those moments when something has broken down in our country and our kids are unable to go to school. And that's causing a lot of stress and strain for a variety of reasons in households. And so lifelong learning is trying to provide some resources. And we hope to be able to entice you to look a little deeper and engage you in discerning if you and your congregation can do some of this needed work at this time.
So we can start by who are those folks in your space that are feeling called to address the educational needs of this moment? Cynthia, you want to say something about who might respond and who they might be responding to?
Absolutely. The people who made, the first people we always think of are parents. And so, because these little people have been under their feet for quite some time and will probably be under their feet for quite some time to come. So we want to be able to, provide some resources for parents. We want to be able to, of course, provide some resources for students. We want to be able to provide some resources for administration and teachers and just school staff in general. So those are some of the things that we want to look at. And we want to look at, who in our congregation is interested in doing this type of work. We fail to ask these questions often. We just get a great ideal and say, we're going to do this, and we assume that we're going to bring everybody along. It's okay if only 4 people in the congregation, 2 people in the congregation want to start this and get it going. If they can do, get on the ground and do the work. As they begin to build more people will probably become engaged and involved.
So as we want to encourage those folks, the 2 or 3 that Jesus talked about, to gather and to begin to explore what they're interested in, what their gifts are, what the needs are in their community, and what are the resources that they have in-house already, the gifts that they already have been given. how these might be offered in service to the children in their community, to the children in their schools. It might be that it's the families in the congregation whose children go to a variety of schools, and they might be interested in partnering or collaborating or supporting other parents in their school who have less resources than, let's say, they themselves. So all of those things invite a small group of people in the church to begin to think through, what does it mean to be of service in this particular way? And the truth is that there's this tool that's been used for forever. I'm sure some of you have already heard it, which is, it goes by various names. So the pastoral cycle of reflection, the theological cycle of reflection, those of you who've read Osmer's, 4 tasks of practical theology, these are just stages of conversation and reflection that are helpful as we try to think of what is the response that we might give to a situation that has arisen in our community and that we feel that we're being called to respond. I have a picture of one version of this pastoral cycle that I wanted to share with you. So in the pastoral cycle, you begin with the exploration and the description. So you start by getting in touch with with who you are, what are your gifts, where are you located, what's happening in your context, right? The exploration and the description of what's happening. Other ways that folks talk about this is that something happens, an event, an activity, a moment, a crisis, as in this case with the COVID-19 pandemic, and they begin to get in touch with what are all the questions that brings and that brings to bear. Then folks, in their first conversation, in describing what they think is going on, they're already going to have a whole lot of rich information because each of them brings their own experience and their own lens to the situation. So you each, the members of the small group in your church, will contribute to a fuller picture of what is happening around you, what's happening in your local schools, what's happening with the children of the families in your congregation, the ones that are in your neighborhood, the ones that are in your children's school. After that, we would invite the group to go get some information, go find out some more about the situation. Who are the players? Who are the people involved? What is going on? What kinds of, the describing of the problem will invite certain questions where there are gaps in your knowledge, things that you don't know, right? And so then you go and you begin to gather all that information, bring it together and analyze that. So that's describing, exploring, and then analyzing together as a small group. As you've gathered this information and you begin to make sense of it, then you can begin to reflect on, what does God say? What does God want? How might God be inviting you to participate in this? What are the things that you feel called to do, the things that feel way outside your league? What are the places where you might be being pushed to grow? And what are the resources that you have that you can bring to bear? Some of us have, we'll talk a little bit more about that in concrete terms. And then you go and respond. You respond hoping to shift and transform the situation that you're engaged in. But you go out and you act. You can't just keep talking and planning and thinking. You have to go act and try what it is you think that you're being called to do, because in that process of trying something out, of experimenting, of throwing the spaghetti against the wall, you'll learn some things and then you can bring them back, and they will have begun then another cycle of exploration where you share with one another in a prayerful setting what happened, how did it go, and you describe that experience again. Analyze what happened. What information do we need? What didn't we know? What else do we have to find out? And that cycle continues on and on and on again. Now, I wanted to invite it because too often we're quick to run to go solve the problem, and we haven't even stopped to think what we already know, what we need to find out, what gifts we have. But it also doesn't mean meetings and meetings and meetings, right? You have to act, you have to take a risk, you have to try and begin to have conversations with other folks so that then you can, in a more informed way, adapt your plan, adapt your response, and together with the community, slowly work out what it is that you're hoping will respond to this particular crisis, how you can be of help to children and their families so that children don't lose schooling and are able to access all the educational resources that they can to help them through this difficult time. So Cynthia, we were thinking that you could give some examples of how people go out into the community and begin to find out what's out there and who's out there that they can begin to work with.
Right. First, I'd say, that this is a call to the laity, that we don't want, you can do this as a lay person without your clergy holding your hand. This is something that really is a responsibility of all of us. And so, the most basic questions, once you find your other, because we're going to go 2 or more, once you find your other, the most basic thing is not just what do you want to do, what's the need? And so the only way that you're going to find out what the need is to engage the people who have the need. So perhaps that is about, contacting first of all, what schools are in your area that are in need? How do you get a list of the needs that people have, whether they're parents, whether they're teachers, whether it's administrators? You make a contact with the school. Who's the principal of the school closest to your church building or closest to your home? When are the school board meetings? Who are some of the parents? Maybe you have a couple parents who are in your congregation. Have a conversation with them around the things that they need. And once you get that basic information, then you have something to begin to work from. But you have to have people who are feeling this. Don't do it because everybody else is doing it. We're not all called to do all things. There will be plenty of things to do. There are plenty of children in God's community and plenty of work to do. Maybe your support is to support an agency that's already up and running in the community. And so that means that you have to reach out and find out what communities are within your congregational district, let's call it that, and ask them, what are the things, how can you be of support? That you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You don't want to create something from the ground up if there are things that are there that you can be supportive of. So that's why you have to begin to build relationships and build, community with the people who are around you.
And I would say that as you're looking to engage and build relationships with these folks, there may be people that you already were in relationship with, and now you can pivot and see how those relationships and those resources can be brought to bear to this problem, how they can be brought to be a resource for addressing this particular problem. Sometimes when we don't know where to start, we need to imagine for ourselves, what would we do or what are we doing for our own children? What are the kinds of things that you're doing for your own children? And then what would it look like if you acted as if all the children in your community were your children?
Absolutely.
Because we are very clear as churches that we are called, to take care of all God's children. That would seem obvious, that Jesus said, let the children come to me. Don't impede them. theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So if we really believe that and we want to live into that, then that's where we start. We start acting as if these children, all these children are ours. So if, what are you doing for your children? What would you do for your children? And then how do you expand that net? How do you expand that network? If all you're doing for your children now is that you're a grandmother who, does a Zoom or a FaceTime or a video chat with the grandkids and reads them a story so that the parents can spend, 3 minutes cleaning up the house or doing something else, then how would you reach out and invite other children in your community that are not your own grandchildren to be part of a story circle, right? So the same exact things that you would do for your children, how would you do it and how would you expand it? Now, the creative piece will be, how do we do it and stay safe? How do we do it with the resources we have? But starting with knowing what you want to do and then adapting it based on the realities of safety and health concerns is easier than starting from the, well, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't. Starting from the things you can't do is very, it's very deflating of your energy. Whereas if you start with you imagining the things you could do and then figuring out, okay, how might we do that given the real circumstances? I just think that if we acted like all the children were our children, we would begin to imagine. And of course, we'd have to talk to parents and teachers and schools and all those folks that Cynthia identified that are in your area. We'd have to talk with them to figure out what the real possibilities and logistics and what they're comfortable with doing. But together you can come up with a plan that's probably pretty awesome. Cynthia, what did you had we're having a whole bunch of other concrete ideas.
Right.
Of things that people
I
could
think
do.
that we need to, once we have made a decision that we're called to this in this moment, then we need to, kind of narrow our focus because there's a lot out there. So we need to be asking ourselves who we're going to respond to. So in the world of possibilities, you could respond to certain age groups. You could respond to certain groups. You could respond to parents because people in all of this tend to forget that the parents, are having it, man. I'm not a little people person. I can't imagine if I had 2 or 3 little people in my house, what I would be doing. We can respond to teachers, administrators, maintenance people. And the ways in which we can do some of this response is absolutely. The story time piece is a big thing. If, you can just open up a Zoom room once a week or twice a week where somebody comes on and they just read a book into Zoom and a parent knows that they can sit their toddler down in front of the computer or cast it onto a TV screen and I've got 5 minutes. Then maybe I can go to the bathroom because any of us who've raised little people know that can be a challenge, or I can get dinner started. That's something that for that for at least that 5 minutes, they don't have to worry about that child in that moment. We can create, work packets where we go to the dollar store even and you buy some of these like workbooks and they're different grade levels where you have the ability to Xerox them. They give you the copyright to make duplicates and things of them and, create these packets and send out a packet once a week where the kid actually and you might have to send a packet with crayons or with colored pencils and a pencil sharpener. And if it's a workbook, don't forget to send the answer sheet to the parent. The answer sheets are in there. And it gives the kids something weekly to be excited about. And it gives you an opportunity if you just drop it at their doorstep to, it's something for them to look forward to. It's a connection that you're making to a family and to a child in a community at a time in which we are so socially isolated that might make a big deal for them. We can also, if you're in an area where they've opened up schools and children are returning to schools, um, you can be supportive of teachers by, buying coffee so that, my goodness, when they go on break, they can get a cup of coffee, or provide snacks for a classroom, or any variety of things. Of course, there are legalese around everything, and you need to check and make sure that legally you are able to do some of these things, because some schools may not allow the snacks to come in, or they might have particular little, and I'm thinking, when I think snacks, I'm thinking toddlers and first graders, like. But if you're sending a packet to a home and you want to send a pack of cheese and crackers with it or something like that, something a kid could enjoy, that when they finish doing their worksheet, hey, here's my little snack. I'm sure the parents would appreciate it. You'd have to make sure there are no peanut allergies. There's a lot of little things that we don't think about, but that gets you an opportunity to engage that parent. It gives that parent somebody outside of their normal structure, just somebody that they can chat with. Sometimes all we need is somebody to breathe. In child welfare, when when I had to go and remove a kid, and when I got the opportunity to really talk to a parent, and and was able to say, you've parented these kids, you have 5 kids, or maybe you even have 2 kids, and you've parented them appropriately for the last 9 years, and we have never been involved or engaged in your life. What happened? And they say, I lost my job, and I've been trying to figure it out, and now I'm about to be homeless, can't find another job, I can't do this, or I didn't have food to feed my children, and I had nowhere else to go. I was turned away from here and turned away from there, and I just snapped. And so this is where a lot of parents who are not as blessed as we are, those of us who are in this, webinar, who have this ability to look up these resources, that sometimes you just snap because there's not a lifeline that's been thrown to you. We all just stand around and we say, they're in the water. Oh, they look like they can't swim, or it looks like their arms are getting tired, and we just fail to throw a rope. So what we're inviting you to do is to throw a rope. Throw
You had an
a
idea.
rope that, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say that you had an idea for people that had like teenagers or youth groups in there.
Absolutely. Teenagers and young people, high school students, even some of our college students. Open up a Zoom room and have them tutor. Offer free tutoring. Hey, we are offering tutoring on this day from this hour to this hour, and that engages the young people who are young adults. At least that's what they want us to believe. And it gives them something to do. Unfortunately, a lot of our congregations are not going to be able to pay people to do this, but it's a service. And I'm sure that we know of young people who be willing to do this. And with new math, it's a lot of parents that need some help,
And I do think that it is about creating, that we become the network of support for families whose network is not as rich as ours in all sorts of ways. And even those who have support, sometimes their support is far away. And with the limitations of traveling during this time, or because folks are vulnerable to disease, they can't count on the grandmother coming over and babysitting the way they used to. So us being able to provide a wider community of support for the people that are in our neighborhoods, that are in our schools, that are in our children's schools, it goes a long way. I hope that our conversation has helped to maybe spark some ideas and encourage you to start having conversation with one another. I do know that reaching out and seeking to get to know people and to provide support is always welcome. And I think that the relationship building is something that we may be starting now, but that can, build into some rich relationships for us as people of faith and for our congregations as communities of faith. Any last things you want to say, Cynthia, before we go away?
I just want to say, do what you can where you can. And don't try to reinvent a wheel. If the wheel is in the community, just get in the car and ride, be support, put the gas in the car. So, and don't forget just the parents, just be supportive. And I'm thinking, of course, of those parents that we're all most concerned about who really are under-resourced. And so when you reach out to them, you might just want to ask, don't forget to ask, are you well? Are you okay? Can I pray for you? Can I pray with you? Can I pray for someone that you know? And you'd be amazed at the response that you get. Ask people what they need. They will tell you. Don't give them what you want them to have.
So good luck. I know God is calling you to do great things. Enjoy, because it's going to be, just like it's a bumpy ride, it's going to be an exciting adventure as you seek to serve
Absolutely.
Christ in all persons.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.